Hi. So today I'm really excited to show you what I think of as being an empath and what I think of as being in your intuition. And I think there's a huge misunderstanding in popular culture where these two concepts are inflated, and being an empath is considered, number one, is considered an inborn trait, which I completely disagree with. Number two, it's considered like something to be celebrated. It's something to almost like brag about. I'm an intuitive and an empath. You're probably also a starseed. Like I think this really helps you not be in your power and not understand how to actually be intuitive. And so I'll get into that in a second. First and foremost, I think of intuition as something that is inherent to you if you are a human, which means you have to be a real human. If you're not a real human, you're most likely going to go off of your programming. So if you're a real human, there's something about you that is related to nature. And as you know, creatures of nature have incredible intuition. Animals have incredible intuition. That's why when you ride a horse and you tell it to go forward and it refuses, it's because it senses something that you can't sense, right? You probably could sense it too if you were in your intuition. And I think you understand this kind of thing where sometimes you have to trust the horse more than you trust yourself based on the senses that you have available to you if you haven't worked on your intuition. So why do these creatures of nature, why do they have access to their intuition when maybe you don't? It's because they don't have egos. So if you are strong in your ego and you haven't learned how to manage that, then the ego comes first. And therefore, you're probably going to have really poor boundaries and you won't be in your intuition. And instead, you're just going to go off your thinking, which is like yucky, So if you're in this state where you don't have access to your intuition and you're thinking all the time, then you might default to the position of being an empath, which has nothing to do with intuition. Intuition has everything to do with you and you, right? So like the horse that understands that, oh, that path up ahead, that's dangerous. That has to do with the horse and the horse, or the horse and you, the rider. Your intuition helps you be you, helps you take care of you. It has very little to do with taking care of someone else, thinking their thoughts for them, feeling their feelings for them, giving them all your energy so that they can be somehow better, which is what an empath does. So to me, being an empath has everything to do with making someone else like the center of your life and or your referent. And you just become like a supporting character in someone else's life. Whereas if you're in your intuition, you're the main character. There's no supporting character in your life. Like you serve you. Does this make sense? So in my opinion, intuition has everything to do with you being within your boundaries. So here we have a little drawing. So if that circle is your boundaries, then your intuition is where you are at if you're inside of your boundaries. So one thing I say is that intuition and boundaries are pretty much the same thing. Intuition is the feminine component and boundaries is the masculine component. So let's just think of intuition as water and boundaries as the cup. So the cup needs to like be able to hold the water, right? If the cup doesn't care about the water is just going to go everywhere. So intuition is feminine, boundaries are masculine. Intuition is the water, the cup is your boundaries. And so if you have strong boundaries, that means you know what they are, which means you have to know what your intuition is. What if the cup can't recognize water? What if the cup is like, I know I'm supposed to hold water, but I can't tell what's water. I can't tell what's water and I'm freaking out, which is what a lot of people feel like. They're like, I don't know what my intuition is. Then you're not going to do a really good job of holding it, right? So the feminine comes first. It's just like a principle of life. So your intuition comes first. And if you know what your intuition is, then you'll know what your boundaries are. And your boundaries are just the masculine component of your intuition. It's like the masculine aspect of you upholding your intuition. Are you with me so far? All right, so intuition has to do with you. It brings you safety, like the horse and the rider. If you don't know what your intuition is, you will be unsafe. Therefore, where are the empaths? Most empaths don't feel safe. They feel as if they're like sponges to everything. I've seen really addicted empaths who are like, oh, it's my life mission to just like sponge up all the negative energy of the world. Like, girl, I don't think that's true. I think you've been psychically attacked and there's some black magic thing going on. That's just not true. I strongly feel that is not your life's mission. Your life's mission is not to be the garbage dump of the world. And a lot of empaths feel like they're the garbage dump of other people around them, right? So if another way to look at this drawing is an extraordinarily simplified beginning of a wheel of consent drawing. If you're in consent with the outside world, or if you're in consent with yourself, then you're in your intuition or you're respecting your intuition. If you're out of consent, you're going to identify as an empath because you have some kind of faculty, right? You have some sort of energetic faculty, but are you using it to serve yourself or are you using it to serve someone else? So an empath does not know what their boundaries are, is not in touch with their intuition. They're out of consent. And a lot of times an empath has a counterpart whom we usually call a narcissist. So both an empath and a narcissist are outside of consent, and both of them are not in touch with their intuition. They're both outside of consent, and they're both not in touch with their intuition. I would say that they're addicted. They're addicted to being outside of consent. An empath and a narcissist, in my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but in my opinion, an empath and a narcissist, they're both addicts, and they're addicts of having bad boundaries, and they're addicts of being outside of consent, and they're addicts of not being in their intuition. Both empaths and narcissists, they're in their minds a lot, correct? So empaths and narcissists are extraordinarily similar in that they're in their minds a lot, they're not in touch with their intuition, and they have bad boundaries. Have you ever known a narcissist to have excellent boundaries? And have you ever known an empath to have excellent boundaries? So boundaries and intuition go hand in hand. If you're an empath, that means you're not intuitive, okay? So please don't conflate the two. And so, all right, so I don't remember if I said this already, but I'll say it now. So if I'm saying it twice, oh well. So to me, an empath is someone who is energetically fawning, F-A-W-N. It's a learned behavior due to trauma. When you're born, let's just say you were not too traumatized in utero, and you can get a lot of trauma in utero, so I'm not going to disregard that, but let's just say you're not too traumatized in utero and you're born in the world. Okay, huge trauma, huge trauma. Any birth is a huge trauma for any being. Let's just say all you have is intuition, right? Like that's all you have. You haven't formed your ego yet. As time wears on, as you're raised in your family, you start to form an ego. And that ego is formed to help you better get the love and approval of your family and later on in the greater society you live in. And so if for some reason what your intuition says you are, or what your intuition says you need is something that kind of goes against what the family can provide you or what society approves of, then you start to form this ego shield to kind of hide who you are, right? And so when that ego shield forms is when someone might start to identify as an empath. I want to ask if you have any questions so far. If you do, just let me know, put them in the comments. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go a step further in this drawing. So I'm just going to put on the left side empath and on the right side narcissist. And this is the beginnings of a classic wheel of consent drawing. Where on the left side, empaths just hang out there. And on the right side, narcissists hang out there. And the reason for that is in the classic wheel of consent, The left side is just where people hang out when they give energy, and on the right side is where people hang out when they receive energy. It's just the way it works in the drawing. So empaths have an ego identity where they like to give. And narcissists have an ego identity where they like to receive. So both empaths and narcissists are outside of consent. One just prefers to give, and one just prefers to receive. So I'm going to go back to that idea that you're born pure intuition. You don't have an ego yet. But as you grow up, you are raised in a family where you're just forced to create an ego over time. Everyone has an ego, right? And your ego identity based on maybe the energy you're born with and who you're always meant to be, or also how you were treated in the family and society. Like, for example, if you're an extraordinarily good-looking person, much easier to play the narcissist. If you're a man, also, it's easier to play the narcissist. Why? Because on the right side of, okay, so this is my teaching of the wheel of consent. This is nothing like the classic wheel of consent. But in my opinion, on the right side of the wheel of consent, people who receive, usually they also have more power in the hierarchy. And you know what Western society is like. So men usually are on the right side of the wheel, and therefore it's easier for them to be the narcissist. Another thing that happens here, mothers have more power in the hierarchy than their children. So mothers who are usually not male, but that's changing now, I guess. It's a whole other topic. So mothers, no matter what their gender identity, they're on the right side of the wheel. You know what's really interesting right now? I'm being slightly psychically attacked right now. So this is really interesting. So mothers, no matter what their gender identity, usually they're on the right side of the wheel, and their children are on the left side of the wheel. So, I think I went one step too far. I can feel it. I think I'm like starting to lose people. So I'm just gonna like scale it back. All right, have you looked at this drawing? All right, so I'm gonna recap a little bit. Both empaths and narcissists are addicted to being outside of consent. Their ego prefers to be outside of consent. Even they go, no, I want to know what my boundaries are. Usually their actions show different. You know, it's like that couch potato who goes, I'm going to go running tomorrow. Did you go running tomorrow? If you didn't, and you lack integrity with yourself, that means you don't want to go running tomorrow, you know? Like the part of you that doesn't want to go run is greater than the part of you that does. So if you're either a narcissist or an empath and you say you want to have better boundaries, then have better boundaries. But if you repeatedly lack integrity with yourself, if you repeatedly lack integrity with others, that means you care more to be outside of consent than you care to be inside of consent. So empaths and narcissists are extraordinarily similar. And the reason for that is actually one is the shadow to the other's ego, and one is the vice versa, but I'll get into that in a second. So the main difference between empaths and narcissists is that the empath's ego feels more comfortable giving. The empath's ego feels more comfortable giving. And the narcissist's ego feels more comfortable receiving. So I was talking about men, good-looking people, power in the hierarchy, mothers. Let me see if I can touch this topic again. The mother always makes the decision for the baby, right? And that's correct. The mother should know better than the baby what the baby needs, because the baby came fresh from source and doesn't understand how this dimension works. You know, babies eat poo. I'm like, right? They like lick dirty shoes. They want to eat things that are dangerous. They want to explore things that are dangerous, and they don't know how to regulate themselves very well. So the mother is supposed to be the masculine for the baby and say, okay, it's time to go to bed. Okay, it's time to wake up. Even if it's something the baby doesn't want to do, the mother is supposed to know better for the baby than the baby knows for itself, which is why the mother has more power in the hierarchy. She's like making the baby do like everything, right? Unfortunately, when the mother is not very attuned to the baby, then this can go really awry. That is definitely a separate subject. But anyway, when mothers are in this position, when their cup isn't full enough to serve this position to the baby, then they just kind of make the baby into something for them. You know, I'm too tired to read you a book. You know, I'm too tired to do this for you. I'm too tired to listen to your story. Like, I'm too tired to be your mother right now. You know, like, you're annoying to me. So what that does, when the mother is annoyed, she is here and the baby is here. Have you ever felt annoyed with someone where you just feel like you're just tolerating what they're saying, or tolerating their presence, or tolerating the fact that they're breathing and they're alive, you know? Like, it's a hostile feeling. All right. I feel the energy. It's really interesting, but I'm going to keep going. All right. So I'm going to take a moment, but I'm going to keep going. Okay. So empaths and narcissists, both outside of the wheel, both addicted to not feeling their boundaries, both addicted to not feeling their intuition. And this is based on their common lack of integrity. Their common lack of integrity. Both empaths and narcissists have bad integrity and bad boundaries. So the only difference is empaths like to give and narcissists like to receive. So basically, when you're a baby, a lot of times you kind of give to your mother. You might think like your mother's giving to you, and I think a lot of mothers feel like they're giving to their babies. But those moments where your mom just doesn't have it in her to give to you, then the dynamic is switched, and then the baby has to give to the mother. So even if you want to be loud as a baby, you're going to be quiet, right? Because mom's going to reject you if you're loud. So that's how you start to form your ego identity. And over time, it just becomes hardened. And some people just feel more comfortable giving. I think you're, if you're either this kind of person or you've interacted in this kind of way, like, I think I've literally given a gift to someone. I think this is a true story. I've given a gift to someone and they were so uncomfortable receiving, they just gave me money for the gift. They just paid me back for the gift. Okay. Where is this person? Where is this person? Right? So do you prefer to be the person who works over hard at work? Do you prefer to be the person who's healing your partner and hoping they become the partner that you deserve? Do you prefer being the person who like forgives your mother for whatever she said and did, but the relationship is really important to you, so you just like swallow a lot of things and then you just do stuff with her all the time anyway? When you prefer to be in the victim position, then most likely your ego likes to be the empath. And what I'm saying, which might be very radical and honestly might be slightly triggering, more than slightly triggering, I'm saying if you're an empath, you're no better than the narcissist. How the wheel functions is this person plays shadow to this person. So whoever's receiving the energy, they get to play the ego. So in the case of the overtired mom, she suddenly becomes a narcissist. I'm not saying she's a clinical narcissist 100% of the time, but when she's overtired and she can't give to the baby in the way that the baby needs, so the baby stops receiving, right? We live in a dual world. So if the baby stops receiving, then the baby starts to have to give. So when the mom is overtired and can't give to the baby anymore, which is going to happen, then the baby has to give. I'm feeling all that energy all over again. So I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, we can do this. All right. So when the mother gets overly tired, she suddenly starts to take this position on the right side of the wheel. And if everyone, the mother wants to think she's a good mother and the baby wants to think my mommy's a good mommy, if everyone agrees that the ego of the situation is a good ego, then the baby is going to do everything necessary to live up to the lie, because in the moment it's a lie, the lie that the mommy's a good mommy. So the baby is going to swallow its needs, right? Deny its needs, or start to even feel scared when it feels its needs. So if you're on the right side of the wheel, you get to play the ego when there's a dynamic of more than one person. So when you're on the right side of the wheel, when there's more than one person, then you receive the energy, you play the ego of the group. When you're on the left side of the wheel, you're the shadow of the group. And empaths are masters of being the shadow. So I used to say it this way. So if you're an empath, right? And you and a group of people are just stranded on an island somewhere, like your plane crashed and there's some survivors and you have to create a new tribe from scratch for survival reasons. If the group, for whatever reason, the members of the group that are already there besides you, not the empath, the rest of the people, they're like, oh, I don't want to be the leader, but someone needs to be the leader. Oh, I'm really bad at making decisions. I'm scared. You know, the empath will be like, I'll be the leader, right? The empath will just do that. The exact same empath, exact same person. If the group of people, for whatever reason, there's a leader and everything's functioning, but everyone's really gross and there's no janitor. Guess what the empath is going to do? The empath is like, I'll be the janitor. They'll just be the janitor all day, all night. The empath kind of like fills in the gaps, right? If your company needs to like make some like Q3 mark and it's not doing a good job, like you might feel overly burdened to make that happen yourself somehow or something like that, you know? Or if you and your mom have a rocky relationship and she's not on a healing journey. Oh, she is not on a healing journey. You're going to like work overly hard to like swallow your pride and dignity and say it's okay and make excuses about that and hang out with your mom and just be like, oh, we've made a lot of progress from before or whatever. You'll probably cherry pick details. This person, when they're outside of consent, often loses their dignity. And this is how you lose your power. And this is how you give up your sovereignty, because you care about the relationship more. So when you care about the relationship more and you identify as an empath, you're going to swallow your dignity. Do you see how that's the opposite of being in your intuition? I think you understand that when you're in your intuition, you're in your sovereignty, you're in your power. Why? Because you're in your effing boundaries. But an empath doesn't care about their boundaries. An empath is willing to violate their own boundaries in order to serve the greater ego identity. Their ego identity is, I'm going to serve the greater ego identity. So the empath's ego quickly becomes energy slave. I'm going to say it, and it can also become energy prostitute. So if you're the kind of empath that likes to listen, then you're going to overly listen. And what you prostitute is your time and attention. And those are the energy points you gain with the other person that you're hoping to like trade in those tokens later, right? And it's all about the relationship. It's a social game. It's not about you with you. Do you trust yourself more after overly listening to someone else? Do you trust yourself more after working too much at the office that doesn't like appreciate you? So all the stuff that the empath like compulsively does is truly an addiction. Is truly an addiction. They can't not do it. What an empath compulsively does is violate their own boundaries again and again and again in service to what feels like the greater whole. But it's really a social game. You need to break it down to a social game, because a lot of empaths can trick themselves and just like really like honestly do like a black magic on themselves. I'm so serious, where it's like, but the corporation I'm working for, it's really important. We're saving the world of XYZ. I don't care. because you're making yourself into an energy slave. And therefore, you're making this corporation or organization, a nonprofit, into your slave driver. And that is not fair to the energy of that corporation nor its mission. I'm going to move on. So this is getting deep. So, all right. I see entities. And this is an extraordinarily reduced, actually, I think we went quite far already, but this is still an extraordinarily reduced lesson in how I see things. I'll just get into it. How an empath and a narcissist attract each other, and I think you know they attract each other, right? These two, they come in pairs. An empath actually does not like to hang out with someone who likes to be in their boundaries all the time. An empath, when they hang out with someone who likes to be in their boundaries all the time, reverts to becoming the narcissist. Because of these two, the narcissist is the one who has less energy. So the empath has more energy to give, so just gives it to the narcissist. But when the empath hangs out with someone in their intuition, guess what happens? This person goes here, and this person goes here. And it's really painful. If you love yourself, if you really love yourself and you take really good care of yourself, and I don't mean like wellness practices, like, you know, you stretch every day and you wake up at the break of dawn and, you know, do your Ayurvedic lemon water practice or whatever. I'm not talking about wellness. I'm talking about you have self-integrity. You have self-integrity. So you think you're worth it, right? And you have high self-value. And it's not like this weird materialistic inflated sense based on lies. It's truly how you feel about yourself. Your inner child is the most precious thing in the world and you love it so much. So if you're that person and you live in your intuition and have really good boundaries, and I don't mean boundaries like these really weird fake boundaries that is in popular culture, just saying no to people when they make requests of you. That is not what boundaries are. You have good self-integrity. So like you trust yourself, you super trust yourself, and you super trust your intuition. And you're able to like live your life guided by your intuition. If you're that person, this empath seriously is going to become a narcissist at you, and you have no choice but to take the empath position because we live in a dual world and it's like magnets, you know? If somehow there's only a North Pole and this neutral thing comes along, it's going to become the South Pole. It's just kind of like the nature of this reality. So this kind of person, it's going to be really painful to interact with an empath because the empath becomes a narcissist. And for this kind of person, it's really painful to interact with this kind of person, right? Oh, interesting. You know what's really interesting? For this person, it's not that painful to interact with this person. They complain about it all the time. They love to complain about it and blame this person, say that, you know, they're not healing as much as they are. They're going to therapy. This person isn't, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? They don't care because they need this person to be the fall guy. They need this person to be like the stupid idiot on the throne because they put them on the throne. This is the Grand Vizier who's running the whole show, who put the stupid idiot on the throne. Because we all know that in this kind of dynamic, who looks down on whom? Socially, this person looks down on this person, socially. But like moral superiority wise, this person looks down on this person. And ultimately, who has more energy? The empath has more energy. That's why they're freaking giving it to the narcissist. So whoever has more energy has more power in the situation. So the empath is giving their power to the narcissist. The narcissist is like really stupid. They're pure programming. They're not on a healing journey. Even if they say they are, there's almost no way they can heal depending on how far along. It's rare, it can happen. But like, in my opinion, if you're like obviously a clinical narcissist, you're probably not on a healing journey in this lifetime, and that's okay. That's okay. And you're lying to yourself and you're lying to others. That happens. But this person is the person who, if you're on a healing journey, you need to like be real. So this person, the empath, feels shame. The narcissist, they feel more shame. They feel more shame, but it's hidden, it's repressed. That's why I put it in the parentheses. So the narcissist feels more shame than the empath. I think you get what I'm saying. The narcissist feels more shame than the empath, but because the empath does have shame, this is what attracts you to each other. This is what like makes you get into relationships together. This is what makes it really hard to quit this addiction. So an empath and narcissist, they're addicted to shame. That's it. That's the big thing. An empath and narcissist, they're addicted to shame. And an empath just feels it more. Why? Because they're more freaking human. Humans feel emotions. If you're a narcissist, you have trouble feeling your emotions, right? That means you're not a real person. So whatever, okay? So these two people, they just trade shame. And then the narcissist does a really good job of saying things and doing things that cause shame psychic attacks at the empath. And the empath is just like reeling in these shame psychic attacks where they don't feel good enough. And as a result, they get really perfectionistic about things, right? And they're always asking this dumb person for their approval, or they want a closer connection with this dumb person who's like really not capable of it. So they're acting dumb too, you know? So I'm gonna say that this person has way more power than this person, but pretends that this person has more power in the situation. So if something's not working in your life, if there's something that you complain about all the time, let's say you're in a relationship and someone cheats on you and you complain about that and you're just like super psychically attacked by that, then that's obviously not the relationship for you. However, if you have a hard time leaving, the shame entities in your system are too strong, and that's really where you have to do the work. Stop looking at the relationship. You have to look at the shame entities in your system. If you're at a job, wait, I'm going to leave that for a second. So if you're at a job that doesn't appreciate you, that you're severely overworked, almost like a slave, like a real white collar slave. Let's just say it's white collar, whatever. It could be blue collar, pink collar, whatever. And you don't feel like you're being paid enough or recognized or whatever, valued, you don't feel valued, then leave. And if you don't leave, that's on you. And if you go, oh, I can't leave because of the economy, because of this, my resume, you know, my industry only accepts, that's you being in your mind, and that's you not being in your intuition, because you create your reality. And if you don't agree with me on that, then I don't think you should listen to any of this video, because life is based on the premise that you create your own reality. So if you don't believe that, I don't think you would have gotten this far anyway. Okay, last thing. I want to ask again, do you have any questions? How is this landing with you? I think we've gotten like crazy far in a very short period of time. Okay. So the empath is the shadow to the narcissist's ego. And the ego, whatever ego, always likes to think it's good. So whatever the ego is doing, even if like you're working for a company that does medical tests on bunnies and then like does horrible, horrible things, we won't go into that. If you work for that company, you're going to defend that company, right? If you complain about your mom, but you want to have a good relationship with her, and then your friend says something, well, your mom did XYZ bad, you're going to defend your mom, right? The shadow supports the ego. So it's like the dirty janitor garbage job. And I think that's what most empaths feel like, especially around other people and their dirty emotions, their undigested emotions. So the narcissist, all the shame that they don't want to feel, they dump it on the empath, and the empath says, give me more. That's the thing. And the empath seriously wanted to feel their boundaries, they would not say, give me more. They wouldn't. But if you are addicted to being the empath, then you're going to say, give me more. You're like the kind of person who over listens to a narcissist robot talking their programming. You know, people who repeat their stories, it's robot. So if you listen to the story and then you humor the person and maybe they say the story again and you humor the person and they say the story again, or like someone's talking for a really long time and you're starting to get impatient, you're starting to feel like, okay, I'm enduring the situation. And then you like stupidly ask them a follow-up question to make them talk even more, you know? Empaths do lots of self-harm behavior. It's like their addiction isn't necessarily cutting themselves with razors. Their addiction isn't necessarily doing drugs. Their addiction is hurting themselves through using a human being or a so-called human being. And they use the human being in such a way where they position the human being on the throne, say, oh my God, I don't have any power. That guy's on the throne. And they do whatever the idiot on the throne tells them to do. And they go, oh my God, my life is so hard. But they're the ones who put the idiot on the throne to begin with. And secretly deep inside, they feel a moral superiority. They feel like they're in control. They feel like they're in control, even if they feel violated all the time, because they feel like they know the truth. I'm better than you, you know? I'm just gonna wait to see that you see that. So it's like this really very clear giving your power away, but lying to yourself and not wanting to admit to that. And therefore, I don't see you going into your intuition, because if you really cared about that, you just do it. It's like, you know, if you want to achieve that goal, you're just going to do the steps it takes to achieve that goal. And if you avoid it at all costs, that means you're just not ready, you know? So anyway, do you see why I say being in your intuition is literally the opposite of being an empath? An empath is actually an addict. An empath is an addict, just like a narcissist is an addict. They're both addicted. They're both addicted to being outside of consent. They're both addicted to not feeling their boundaries. They're both addicted to not knowing their intuition, not trusting their intuition. They both have low trust, right? And they're both, this is the big one, they're both addicted to shame. That's the main thrust of everything. And if we want to go a little bit further, then the narcissist gets to play the ego and the empath gets to play the shadow. The thing is, the empath put that narcissist in their place. And the other twist is when an empath interacts with someone who's more in their intuition. So maybe this person is also an empath, but just are more in their intuition and more in their boundaries. Then the empath goes here and the intuitive person goes here. And the empath starts to play the narcissist. So those are the bullet points from today's, you can call it a lesson. I'm really curious what your questions and comments are. All right, so thank you for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.